So, just did an episode on polyamory, or is it polyagony? It was one that got some responses. In fact, there was one question in there because we focused on, especially guys that are saying, oh, men, they're biologically made to have multiple partners. And the question was from a woman, and she said, well, I can see all the reasons why it didn't work for a guy in general, but what about for us women? What if us women want a threesome? So there were three main factors that I discussed in that video why it's frankly polyagony for most guys. And let's be clear too, there is a difference between polyamory, meaning that you actually have multiple loves, it implies a little bit more of a relationship, and a threesome, which is a sexual experience, frankly, that could happen all in one night. Though I guess technically you could have a one love all in one night that's happening just there in that moment, in the present time, and doesn't need to then continue forwards and people go off and live their lives, but it forever burns on in eternity. Let's though look at the reason why I called it polyagony. Three reasons. One, you have the physiological factors that come into a sexual experience. You then have the emotional factors that come into it. And then you have the choice factors of who it is that you're having involved. Now, if you look at it from this perspective, whether it's a long-term polyamorous relationship or it's a threesome, and frankly, I believe this question that was being asked was more around the threesome factors. And we'll have a whole other one on what actually could make for a good threesome. But since it was asked, well, isn't it maybe a better natural fit for a woman to have two men? I mean, if you think about it, in terms of the physiology or just the anatomy, I mean, just to be crude, there's multiple holes and you have multiple pegs. And so it kind of makes sense that way. You don't have to deal with the premature ejaculation factors of the one guy. And in fact, if one pops off, then you have the next. And maybe by the time that one's done, then the second one's already got it back up again. And then things can just go ahead as proceeding. And you have this little sort of merry-go-round. Now, the other part is the emotions. Could also make sense too. Well, emotionality, the emotional aspect. Women are, known for having a higher emotional IQ, or that they are more sensitive. They actually like to speak about emotions. So, and if it's just them that are having the predominant most of the emotions and not the men, now they have two guys that they can split their emotions with, or, maybe they can actually enjoy just dealing with two guys' emotions. Well, that's one argument as well. Then how about partner choice? Well, we'll leave that one because I think that if we look at partner choice, and I have so many female clients, I have so many female friends that this is strictly one of the biggest things that they struggle with is partner choice. But let's actually then go ahead and get into it. You know what, we'll start off with partner choice, in fact. So normally, there are two types of guys that a lot of women choose, and it's rare that they actually have the two meet. And that is, they like the bad boy, or they have marriage boyfriend material. And a lot of times these two do not really kind of cross roads. In fact, it's always sort of this tear between one or the other, and some will either pendulate between the two or else they'll just go down bad boy alley until they've just had enough of it and finally go, you know what, I want a real relationship, I'm just sick and that just doesn't work. Or they've met the partner or their friend or whatever it is that is the right one, that they know they have this great relationship with. They stay together for a long time, doesn't really have the chemistry, and then at some point in comes bad boy, they try something different, and then all of a sudden they have this big shift. But again, as you can see, these two don't cross very well. So how does that work out when you are going into a threesome? Or even more complicated, a polyamorous relationship. I mean, what does that look like? Do you have the bad boy who then you're going to then be attracted to, and you just like bad boys, and so you're going to attract another bad boy when a lot of times the bad boy's already an alpha, and now you bring in another alpha? Unless these two bad boys are very good friends and they just want to have fun and they have their own internal agreement, but then it's not really you choosing, and maybe you don't want to have to be responsible for the choosing, but the chances are that, you know, one alpha chooses and brings in another alpha. Like, it's can be a little bit complicated there, and you can probably see that. Or let's say you then have found the partner that you really like, he's a good guy, and you even convince him to go out and bring in this other one and other person, and what are you going to do? Bring in then the bad boy that you're actually craving? In which case that bad boy is going to probably out alpha or enter into some form of competition with your guy. The chances that he'll just sort of put that reputation down, it's just highly unlikely. And then what's the other option then? That you have two just good guys. Well, if you're not satisfied with the one good guy experience that you have, and now all of a sudden you bring in the second good guy experience, now you just have a little bit more of the thing that you didn't want in the first place. And likely the first time you meet a bad boy, you're just going to go off and be with that single bad boy. So again, not as easy of a fit as you might think. All right, well, leaving that to the side, let's talk now about the physical aspects of this. You have a body, multiple holes, multiple pegs, seems clear. And one guy doesn't last long enough, then you have the other. Well, if you have ever felt that your one guy has too many demands, wants too much, or if you've ever dealt with, my body's not ready, or I get into pain, or I start to numb out, any of these factors, just know that that's going to happen times two. That's going to happen faster. It's going to happen more intensely. And if you're not able to just manage the sex drive of your one partner, what makes you think now that you're going to bring in another and that's going to solve it? Now, in a polyamorous relationship, that's going to be a daily thing. Now, of course, maybe it's long distance or whatever else, but I mean, anyways, as you can see, the point is that you are going to have something that is going to consistently be there times two. Well, what about if it's just a threesome? Well, same thing. You are going to have a very charged moment where you're having two men having their needs, and if it's already in your relationship, a bit of a dynamic that, you know, your partner's coming to you wanting more from you, and in the moment you feel that maybe you're not being really attended to in the way that you want, and so therefore you're going to outsource this problem by bringing in another man. More than likely you're going to have now two guys that are not going to be paying attention to your needs. All right, what about the emotional side? And this one's interesting because yes, much more emotional capacity, let's say. Let's say that we go along with the argument that there's also this higher emotional IQ, which I actually would probably argue in general is the case. Except for when it comes to falling in love. And this doesn't mean that your emotional IQ is lower. It just means that because you're more attuned to emotions, I've noticed time and time again that when either my female friends, female clients take on a new lover, have a lover on the side maybe, or bring in somebody for a threesome or a polyamorous relationship, it's the Ariel Helwani, great MMA commentator, coined the term that then I heard through Chael Sonnen talking about recency bias. And that means that the thing that has happened and is the new shiny little coin gets a lot of the attention. And it's not just a physical attention, especially in the case of women. A lot of times when all of a sudden there is a tremendous amount of pleasure that gets brought in, and if it is associated with this new person, then guess where all of that emotional attention gets diverted? It goes towards that other person. And then questions start to get asked. Am I in love? Why am I fantasizing about this person? So if you notice that you're the type of person that is wanting either more emotional attention, that is wanting more pleasure and sensation, or has this tendency to just, if you look at any relationships, the time that you've had sex with a person, and maybe you've held off having sex even with a person because you knew that it was going to reorient you around them in a very particular way, the likelihood is that when it comes to either a polyamorous relationship or a threesome, your focus is going to head to the new person. And you go from very quickly polyamory to simply being probably a mess.